These concepts are not available today. If you go to school, if you go to college, if you do your engineering or medicine or anywhere, in fact, these concepts have to be brought back into our consciousness. And that is the purpose why we are spending some time brushing these concepts up. But let us never think even for a minute that understanding love or karma or dharma is the end of this process. This process is just to energize us so that when the need comes to act, we act according to dharma, we act according to the principles that have been taught. But it is action that is required here. And that's why this picture of Swami that you see is very, very credible. Swami's whole life was a life dedicated to action. While he gave more than 6,000 recorded discourses, you can see what he is doing there. He was that guru of gurus who acted as the alarm clock in our lives. And he is not one to back away. Once we give him and make him in charge of our lives, then he steps in and he tries to help us to remove that illusion. And then we ended the last session by showing this beautiful picture that, okay, so this guru that we approach, what does he do? It's not only by his words, just by feasting our eyes on him, having darshan, sparshan, sambhashan. And brothers, sisters, stop for a minute. Today, you don't go to the Parthi and sit there and wait for Swami to come out, but take a look at the 50th birthday pictures without any social media. And I don't say this in a oratorical or rhetorical manner, that keep on saying that, oh, Swami did this without social media. But that should awaken us. Swami, by his presence, without any emails, without any announcements anywhere, the way he acted as that magnet and pulled us to his feet from across the globe, that is something significant. And why do we dwell on that thought? Because it calms us down, because it takes away our longing for the world and turns that longing towards Sai. And then by doing that continuously and constantly, one day we hope to get what this gentleman got here, Shaktipata Mudra. So I'll stop with that as a recap of what we did last time, and I'll move on to this time's agenda, this session's agenda. And what I want you to do is, I want you to respond to my questions on the chat as I ask them from time to time. So get ready to do that. So I have been trying to take Swami's Gita Vahini and reference the verses of the Gita themselves and then bring that out to you. And obviously we cannot, work on all the, or even many of the verses, but a few of the verses I have picked which are very dear to Swami and which Swami has expanded upon. So if you want to reference the Gita Vahini itself, you should look at chapters 5, 6, 7. That is what we are trying to cover here. In the Gita Vahini, Swami's commentary, he wrote 27 chapters. Currently, I am on chapter 5, 6, 7 and trying to cover the same verses that Swami describes there. So Swami talks about the path of action and he describes this beautiful and fairly well-known verse of the Gita. I'll just say it out because this has a very beautiful effect on us. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetur bhurma te sango stvakarmani. So Swami says, and this is very important, this ma phaleshu. And if you read here, it is kind of self-explanatory, but there is a lot of hidden meaning as well. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruit of your actions. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities nor be attached to inaction. Now, there's a whole lot thrown in there. And you can understand why Krishna had to pack so much meaning, because this was on the battlefield. And of course, he knew that the scholars, the, the rishis, will elaborate on the ideas that he's giving. So let us dwell on this. It is not as if we have to perform action and uh, give up the fruits, but we have to mentally think, we have to mentally be aware that there is a process of getting attached to the fruits. If you make a great presentation to a customer, immediately the thought starts arising, okay, now I'm going to win this deal, I'm getting a promotion at my company. If as a mother you are cooking a dish, it is quite natural according to our thought process to think, oh, my visitors who are coming, the guests who are coming to my house, of course nowadays hopefully are not having guests in the time of COVID, but otherwise you would think, oh, everybody is going to praise how beautifully I have cooked this recipe. Now what Sri Krishna is trying to tell here, and as I said in the earlier meaning, even if we can take a small piece of this teaching, but we have to run with it, we have to live with it. So he says, don't think of causality. Don't think that I am the cause of things. Don't think, for instance, you may take your child to a guitar class or a vocal class every week for 10 years. Who is it who can take credit for the for your child becoming a great violinist or a guitar player or a vocalist? Can the teacher take credit? Can you take credit for driving your child there every day? Or can your child take credit? So, this whole concept of causality is thrown into question here. And what do we need to understand here? Look at this universe. Look at the universe. Who can take credit for anything? And it is not that Sri Krishna is saying, hey, do action and forget about the fruit. Sri Krishna is saying, as part of the universe, all of us, if we are in sync with the universal spirit, no one of us is can take credit for any specific thing to happen or not to happen. And I want to say this because this is the height of the concept. If we want to dwell in concepts, that is at the highest level, this whole concept of universality. No one individual can take credit for anything that he or she seems to have achieved. And that is why Sri Krishna says that act in the guna of sattva guna, as you can see here. So what happens is this whole idea that we take credit for what we do comes from this rajasic tendency or the passion that we have for action and for its fruits. So those of us, and we have all at some or the other point desired that I did this, so yes, I'm going to get this fruit. I did this, and now people are going to praise me. And the reverse also starts happening. Oh, I did this badly, so now, I'm going to face discredit. I'm going to face criticism. And when we take that thought further, as you can see, Swami has described what tamoguna does to this concept. Sometimes you try to run away from consequences because, again, that sense of doership is there. And you think, oh, I sang this song badly. Now I'm getting up from the bhajan and everybody's going to come and tell me, oh, but you are such a good singer. What happened to you today? So that is that wanting to, inability to face consequences. All of this is tied to the fact that we think we are the doer. Now, we have only a few minutes here, and I don't want to dwell only on this verse, because the idea of this is to get all of us inspired to do two things. One is to take these concepts at a slightly deeper level and then to try to practice it in our lives. So I'm going to ask you a couple of quiz questions. Okay. I'm going to stop the share and I want all of you to take your uh, chat windows and answer this thing for me. So, what in your view is Krishna asking, Sri Krishna asking us to give up? Write it in one word or two words and let us see what you think is the summary of this very popular verse. Go ahead, please type in as much as you can. Okay, I see some coming up. Sense of personal doership, desire, expectation to our actions. Beautiful. Fruits of our actions, result of your actions. Okay, great. So now I'm going to give you a little way to remember what Swami has said. Wonderful, by the way, your responses were. So Swami is telling us that you have a right to perform your duty. And all of you know, none of us can stay without the performance of action. You may think one day that, you know what, I'm just going to sit back, I'm not going to do anything. And all of a sudden, somebody calls you or your child wakes you up and says, do this. And all of a sudden, all those resolutions are thrown out and you're back to action. So what is Krishna asking us to do? Two things. One is act in the spirit of sattva guna, the serenity and purity of sattva. And I'll tell you, when I worked at the hospital, in the initial years, I did not realize what is going on. Many of the doctors who came from the commercial world, they were earning in India lakhs of rupees. For every surgery, they would literally get lakhs of rupees. And then they came and they worked in Swami's hospital, and I interacted with many of them. And they all told me, Ravi, I don't know what it is in this, at that time, this term was not very common. Today, all of us make this great, provide this great title to Swami's hospital, Temple of Healing. This was in the year 91, 92, 93. So many doctors from All India Institute, from Mumbai, from Hyderabad, would tell me this. There is something about working in this hospital that makes us feel very wonderful. This non-commercial, they were not able to lay a finger on it. And that is what I think Swami is referring to there, this purity and sanctity and the serenity of the environment. It goes into you, and then you don't take that credit. You stop linking satisfaction to growth of your bank account. I don't mean to trivialize this. We are all prey to these things. We only comprehend returns. In fact, even in our work, every day the customer asks us, tell me what's the ROI from this? What's the return on investment of this? And probably in my view, because we are not working from that level of purity and serenity, we have to act, we have to try to influence, to improve, and all that. But we are constantly linking that with self gain, with wanting the result of what we are doing for myself. And that is what you see in the Temple of Healing, that these doctors, they did not have a face. None of the patients who came to Satya Sai Hospital felt that Dr. Neelam Desai or Dr. Das is the key person. Yes, they met them, they knew their name, but everybody took Satya Sai Hospital as the cause for their cure. And these doctors were willing to step back and not be seen as the prime mover of the cure. And that is what gave them a deeper sense of satisfaction. So Swami says Do not be attached to the consequence. And why do you hold on to the consequence? And how do you hold on? It is that worry, that restlessness. And Swami says that is nothing but weakness. So now I'm going to tell you this beautiful thing called NATO. NATO is not North Atlantic Treaty Organization for us right now. It is not attached to outcomes. There will be outcomes. Maybe you are not the cause of the outcome. Maybe all of us are the cause of the outcome. Maybe destiny, maybe God is the cause of the outcomes. But essentially, this karmanyeva adhikaraste, what does it try to teach us? And it's very easy for you to remember. Every time you think, oh, this is such a wonderful opportunity to project myself. I will be known through this. I will leave a legacy. Just let this 4-letter acronym flash in your mind and say NATO. I will not be attached to outcomes. And then, brothers and sisters, what will happen? See, this is an opportunity for us. And later on, we'll see what is preventing us from taking up these opportunities. So what happens is you cannot always be so sharp. This human mind that you have been endowed with is going to take you into this trap. Hey, I did this. Today I have seen 33 patients. Today I made 4 customer presentations. All went well. And then you start thinking, wow, I've done it. I'm there. Or if you're in a political role or a governor's role or whatever, say, wow, my state is flourishing. I grew the GDP by so much. At different levels, this mind is going to trap us. So Swami gives us a very beautiful.
त्यांनी तुला म्यूट केलंय म्हणजे आपण नाही पोस्ट म्युटेड बोलतोय.
Sairam, can you please mute yourselves? So Swami gives us a simple way, which is through the path of bhakti. He says, offer this to me. Yes, you may feel, oh, I'm the guy. Then what you do is you substitute with a thought which says, Swami, I offer this. Visualize Swami's feet and just take that action as if it is a thing. Take it in your hands and give it at Swami's feet. And then what will happen? This cycle, this cyclical nature of karma binding you, taking credit, getting bound, taking credit, getting bound, thinking that I did it, and you come back to enjoy or suffer for that, you will come out of that bondage producing effect of karma. So again, I'm going to stop sharing and I want all of you to answer a couple of questions that I am posing to you. One, what is the other meaning of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization that we just discussed? Okay, not attached to, yeah. So it is not about not being attached to our actions. It's not being attached to if it's good if we are not attached to actions. And this is a very beautiful thing that Sri Krishna teaches Arjuna, and we can apply it to Swami. Swami said, I have no need to perform actions. And you can see, brothers and sisters, what a burden Swami took on himself by starting the colleges. He started the college in Anantapur, then in Brindavan, then in Puttaparthi. And do you know, we never paid any fees for our college. We only paid hostel charges for boarding and lodging. And they were so ridiculously low. We would pay something like 300 rupees a month for all the meals and the milk and everything that we got, and electricity and all that. And then, see, this should really show us the hand of Bhagwan, and that's what should make us inspired to act. Swami, when he took on the burden of the hospital, everybody in the Central Trust, I was there. Swami used to take me to Purnachandra Auditorium, In fact, in one meeting in Purnachandra Auditorium, we had Keith Critchlow, Isaac Taggart, Colonel Joga Rao, uh, and many others over there. And Swami refused to go for that meeting. He took us there to Purnachandra. The meeting was happening in the conference room, and Swami was sitting there. And Swami told us to make these plates with pakoda, coffee, piece of cake, and something else. And we went and served them. And Colonel Jogara would keep on coming into Swami's room. And Swami, meer kuda ravali. Chala important meeting, Swami. This was in the month of March of 1991. Swami had made this announcement in 1990 in November. And Swami said, I'm not going to come. All of you are not agreeing what to do. This is not how the hospital will be built. And they were all trying to find the human way out of things. And Swami was refusing to participate in that meeting. And that year, Swami took me to Kodaikanal, and he had the plans of the hospital laid out on his lap. And he was laughing like a little child, and he was talking, and he was, with that bubbling enthusiasm, and he was saying, intamandi ostaru, ikkad kurchuntaru, so many people will come, they will be sitting in the outpatient here. And Colonel Jogara was standing there. He was the man who built a lot of Swami's institutions. He was so close to Bhagwan. And then he would not sit down. Swami kept on telling him, Emi kurcho, Jogara, kurcho, sthalam undi kada akada, there is place for you on the sofa. He would not sit. Then finally he waited, he insisted on Swami coming to the back of the main hall. And he told Swami there, Swami, funds are not coming at all. That was 1st May 1991. And it is history. I know I have said this many times, but it makes me have such nobility in my heart when I think that Swami gave this opportunity to see this miracle firsthand. I don't have to read any commentary. We got to see firsthand how, when I went on to the hospital on November 4th, there was nothing there. And I was one of those instruments that Swami handpicked. And we got the hospital going on November 21st. We had 4 surgeries done. And what are we taking away from this? Swami said, I have no need to act. Why am I taking the burden of such a major investment? And see, brothers, Swami has left the body so many years back. Even today, that hospital is running. So that is a huge thing for us. That should really hit us and inspire us. And Swami said, it is great people who will lay the basis for the ordinary people. That Swami, who never needed to act, took on such incredible burden, unasked. Nobody demanded. In the later years, a lot of groups started coming from different places, Godavari, West Godavari, East Godavari. Swami, you give us also water project after seeing the Chennai water project. But Swami never had anybody asking him to build the hospital. That's why I see that this whole teaching of Sri Krishna, not attached to outcomes, is for us. And like one of you wrote in the chat, not attached to action. He was beyond action. What a tremendous inspirational story for us. No attachment to action. And the other sign of that lack of attachment to action, on 16th or 17th November, Dr. Safaya, who was the first director of the hospital, he came from All India Institute, very great devotee, Kashmiri in origin. He came to us and he said, you know what my wife is saying? Safaya auntie is telling, let us take a taxi and go back to Delhi, because in 4 days, the world will know that we failed Swami. On 16th or 17th November, he told us this. And he said, then he took the report from each one of us for how the hospital was coming up, what were our challenges. And it's only history when we look back, right? So when you put your hand with God, success cannot be denied. And that whole discussion of causality, what is it that I do? What is it that I drive? What is it that I am responsible? goes away. You become very peaceful. And Swami showed us that you put your hand, you put your faith with me. I, through my Vajra Sankalpa, I will make this happen. And this is exactly the story of Arjuna and Shri Krishna. In our own small way, we have an opportunity to reenact this. Swami told, Shri Krishna told Arjuna, why are you taking responsibility? You think you are this great archer? And later on, he shows him, he cannot even lift his bow. Everything is due to Shri Krishna's energy, through Shri Krishna's will. So the lesson for us was, even though we thought we were fighting a losing battle in building the hospital, Swami made imperfect instruments into instruments that made things click and work. And he gave us credit for it. On that day in November 91, Swami gave 4 trophies to Professor Venugopal, Isaac Taggart, Keith Critchlow, and another person. I think it was the Larsen and Toubro chairman. Swami gives credit. He doesn't want credit. He is completely unattached. And brothers, sisters, I'll tell you, I was a little bit down 2 days back, and I got this beautiful WhatsApp message about T.G. Krishnamurti, how Swami sits in the car in, I think, 76 or 77, tells him, go left, go right, go left, go right, makes him completely crazy, takes him to that big hospital. Swami tells him to wait in the car, climbs up to the first floor, revives this great devotee Parvatama, and then quietly comes and sits in the car. And he doesn't tell this man anything until he demands. Then he tells, I went to revive Parvatama. And how he revives her? With the little finger of his hand. Swami says, open your mouth, and coffee comes out from his little finger. When I read that miracle, what is the purpose of these miracles? These miracles happened in 76. That is 24 and 20 years, 44 years back. But these instances cannot die. If you and I have value for Swami, you and I have value for this, it will revive our spirits. So the story of the hospital, you may be thinking, what, every time Ravi tells this story. But you know why I tell it every time? Every time I had an opportunity to give a speech in front of Swami, I would start talking about miracles. And Swami would patiently listen for 2-3 minutes. Then he would quietly say, and the 10-20,000 people seated there could not understand. Swami would say, Chal, the hospital gurinchi cheppu. Enough. Now tell about the hospital. And these are the ways in which the sweet Lord has given us these leelas in our heart. This relationship with Him is a relationship of heart to heart. And you may be thinking, how can we do this karmanyeva adhikaraste? You don't have to worry. You have to do this yajna of whatever you do, excuse me, offering it to Swami. So, and then what will happen as you go along this path, which you just have to try? Don't have to attach too much. Uh, don't be too thoughtful about it. Don't let your mind come in the way. So when we talk about the Sharanagati, that Swami says, this Samatva Buddhi, don't start thinking, hey, how will I get this Samatva Buddhi? Every little sway and I get swayed. Every little change in direction, don't worry. Just take one step at a time. And I tell you, I myself was such an imperfect person. Not that I'm any more perfect today, but I think over the years I got a little bit hollowed out in Swami's presence. So all we have to do is remember that, hey, I have to have this Sharanagati. This Sharanagati is what? Every time I start taking credit for a good vegetable that I cooked, or I found a great uh, program for my kids, or I did something for somebody, instead, you say the 2 things, NATO, don't be attached to the outcomes, and then, like a true devotee, say, hey, Swami, I know how you made that hospital come alive. Take me also as your instrument, Lord, and I offer this action to you. Just take that action as a physical thing in your hand and place it before Swami. So before I get too much, emotional and tied up, I'm going to throw it back to you all, and I'm going to ask you to take the chat window. And this is something that I haven't covered, but I spoke about one thing, which is karma. I want you all to guess, and this is something all of you probably know, but you have to apply it now. What are the twin pairs? What are the two things? I spoke about karma. What is the other piece? What do you think is the twin of karma in the Gita? And I'll give you a hint. While there is karma yoga, there is jnana sannyas, karma sannyas yoga, there is no chapter by that name. But Swami gives great importance to that particular word. Come on, let me see you all take a guess as to what is the twin of this word karma in the Gita. No takers? Take a guess. Exactly. Dharma. Gautam ji, thank you for writing that. Thank you for being bold enough to do that. And Vinny, of course, you're not wrong, nor is Vinita. Tyag and Bhakti are also very important. But in this particular section of the Gita Vahini, Swami says that karma and dharma are the two twin aspects. And now we are going to go into a little challenging piece. I'll only talk about this for 5 minutes because I want to end with this chapter 440, which you see at the end. It's very important for us. But before that, I'm going to talk about this very challenging piece. And it's not, you and I don't have to take responsibility about the Varna system. You and I don't have to worry how we will answer the West when they criticize, oh, you guys believe in casteism. Put all that aside. In the true spirit of bhakti, in the true spirit of submission to the master, which is the most important thing in Sanatan Dharma, in Vedanta, we put our knowledge, our questioning, our doubts second to our master. And let's dwell on this. So Sri Krishna says that there are these chaturvarnyam maya shrushtam. I just want to stop with that. And this should put all our uneasiness aside. These four varnas have been created by me. Maya shrushtam, Sri Krishna says. The four categories of occupations, however they have been misinterpreted, badly applied, misused, even abused over the centuries, over these thousands of years. Sorry, none of us have to take any responsibility. How do I justify it? Isn't it the same way in which the protests are happening today? Please, brothers and sisters, be at peace. This is a divine dispensation. It is not of the creation of man. Sri Krishna says, I created the world, and in this world, I am the creator of the system. In the non-dual way, as the non-dual person, I created this system of four varnas. And do not misinterpret it for the way it has been applied. The Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. Sri Krishna says, and I purposely put this verse here. Swami, of course, has spoken a lot about it in the Gita Vahini, and he has described it. I invite you to visit that. I can share the PDF with you if you don't have it. But I want you to hold on to that in the process, when we said that dharma is the twin of the concept of karma, because what karma am I going to do? I'm going to do the karma as described or as prescribed by my dharma. It is that karma that I have to perform. It's in that context that Sri Krishna says, all these people are already killed and destroyed in me. In cosmic consciousness, they are already gone. Why do you think that you, who all this time lived the Kshatriya Dharma. You used your bow and arrow and you won so much acclaim and success. And today, when you're seeing the negative impact of this dharma, now you are saying, no, 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 I am going to give up this dharma. And that is the more important takeaway. Whatever the dharma that you and I have inherited through our ancestry in our lives, we should not disown that. We should act on that basis. And it is for you to understand what is my dharma. It is not for me to tell you that. But maybe when you read that page in which Bhagwan has described this whole concept of dharma, you will gain a clearer understanding. But whatever is your dharma, acting according to that and not thinking that, oh, I did such a good job, or like Arjuna did when he in this Vishad Yoga, he says, now though I'm this great archer, now I'm giving up this Kshatriya dharma. When he saw the negative, he said, no, I'm giving it up. And that is the call to action. That whether you have success or failure, remember that that success or failure is not coming due to you as one individual. You are part of a large scheme of things. Don't try to take so much responsibility. That responsibility only lies with Sri Krishna or with Bhagwan Sri Satya Sai Baba. Just understand that it is yours to act, not yours to take credit or discredit. And now, having spoken about this very challenging concept, I want to end with this very beautiful and most meaningful verse which Swami used a lot when he spoke with us as students. Because do not think for a minute, brothers and sisters, that, oh, these fellows went to Swami's college and, they saw Swami's glory and they just believed in Swami and today they are lecturing us all this. Not at all. We were pulled to Swami. Today we can see that. He was the string puller, he's the magnet. But don't think for a minute that we did not feel like questioning what is happening, what Swami's actions were. This mind that we inherited is a terrible demon. It can also be a great uh, doorway to liberation. Swami often used to tell us as students, very simple analogies he would give. Said there is a lock and a key. Turn the mind to the right and you will get liberation, moksha. Turn the mind to the left and you will be locked into samsara. And that whole picture is over here. I hope you can see this picture. If you take this mind who is at the center of all our lives and in this dotted arrow, run it through your indriyas, karmendriyas, senses, jnanendriyas, then you will be tied with the world. If you are wise enough, if you have found peace at the Guru's feet, if you have tasted that there is something special going on here with Swami, then slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, you will start moving towards applying the buddhi or the intellect and say, this is not correct. This is not in my spiritual favor. This is not what Swami is asking. Let me stay away from this. Let me do sense control. Let me not flow into the senses. That doesn't lead me to any good place. If you move in this direction, you will discover a higher reality, which is the Atma or the soul. But coming back to this, what is it that prevents us? So this is known to everybody. Swami didn't say anything great when he said that you can do either. You can work for your liberation or for your bondage. What is it that prevents us? So Sri Krishna says that, people possess two qualities on their spiritual journey: faith and spiritual knowledge. And there are three levels of people. The lowest level of people have some spiritual knowledge but no faith. The middle level have faith but no knowledge, and they keep doubting themselves. because they have faith in their master, but they haven't understood and got that spiritual knowledge. And then there are finally those who have both some growing spiritual knowledge and deep faith in the master. And this is what Swami says, that if you have sanshay literally means doubt, then this doubt can be very destructive to your spiritual progress. It will not destroy you. Sanshaya Atma Vinashyati. And Swami used this phrase thousands of times during my stay there. In fact, brothers and sisters, many times, Swami would materialize something, and then he would look down at us, because we imagine, you may think that, oh, Swami could just be free. We would be as many as 45 to 50 people in a room of this size, what I'm sitting in now. Imagine, Swami was perspiring. We were like not one person at Swami's feet. 4 pairs of bodies, 4 people were sitting there at Swami's feet around his interview room chair. And then there were 45 other people. In that situation, Swami would materialize something. And then often he would look at 1 or 2 boys and say, Emra, doubt ostunda? Are you doubting me? Then he would launch a discourse and says, don't be doubting Thomases. And one day, Swami went up to a person sitting in the ladies' side of where the ladies would wait for interviews. Very old lady. And he tapped her on her knees. And he had like 45, 50 letters in his left hand. And in those days, sometimes I used to think, hey, Swami is doing this for effect or what? Can't he give the letter to the person who's following him? With so many letters in his hand, overflowing. 1 or 2 letters would fall down and a boy would run out and give it to Swami and he would put it there, but he would not give the bunch of letters away. Then he went up to that wheelchair lady and he tapped her on his knees, just simple tap like that. And he gave her his right hand and lifted her out of the wheelchair. And at that moment, I got a doubt. I thought, is this just one of those ladies who is using wheelchair because she gets tired? And Swami turned to me and gave me a very meaningful look. Fortunately for me, he didn't say doubting Thomas. He has used that word doubting Thomas for many of my friends, many of my colleagues. I have seen him say that. Fortunately, but in that meaningful look, he conveyed everything. So this Sanshaya Atma Vinashyate, we'll stop with this today, but I want to tell you that all of us, this doubt that we are getting is springing from the mind. And don't condemn yourselves. And I'm not trying to say that, see, when Swami said to us, doubting Thomas, in fact, if you know the meaning of doubting Thomas, when Christ, after the resurrection, appeared in that household where there were 8 or 10 of his disciples gathered, he showed them the stigmata, as it is called, which is the fact that they had driven the nails through his palms and crucified him. He was hanging by the nails that they had driven through his palms. And Christ uh, allows some of them to put their finger through that wound. That is the story. But Thomas, the great disciple, was not there at that moment. Maybe he had gone to the market or outside. And when he comes back and they say that, the Christ is alive, Jesus is alive. And he says, he refuses to believe it. And he says, I cannot believe it. And in a flash, Jesus appears behind him and tells him, Thomas, you are blessed that you have seen me again. But blessed are those who will believe in me without having seen me. And this is always going to be the challenge. And are we forever devotees of Swami? Are we forever believing in him? Obviously, our bhakti, our belief, our inspiration levels are now and then going into an ebb. We forget who we met. I forget how many times I had an opportunity to touch his feet. I forget the things that he told me about myself. I forget about the assurances that he has given me. And this is not, God never condemns you. You know, in the Shiva Puran, it is written that the difference between the guru and the judge is very beautiful. The guru is constantly watching. He's giving the test to his disciple, but he is saying, oh, he will pass, he will pass, he will pass. He's such a good student, he will pass. And the judge in the court, you know what he is doing? He's seeing the defendant and the witnesses and the prosecutor, and he's waiting to catch when will the defendant fail. That is the difference. The guru is working for our uddhar or elevation. He says, doesn't matter. Okay, you failed. And don't feel bad that your inspiration is at low ebb. Swami says, even Vishwamitra, he could go to Dasharatha's court and say, oh, you don't know who your two boys are, Rama and Lakshmana. They are incarnations of Vishnu. But in few hours, when he takes them to the forest, first thing he does is, he says to Rama and Lakshmana, whom he has just now described as incarnations of Lord Vishnu, he tells them, you know what? In this forest, you will not get food. Here is the mantra. And you will not be able to sleep because you have to protect the rishis from the demons. So I'm teaching you the mantra, which will reduce your need for food and sleep. And Swami himself says, how foolish. In few minutes, Vishwamitra, who had done penance for years, for decades, for scores of years, forgot. And what is Swami's teaching there? First thing, don't condemn yourself. Because in this self-condemnation, when you fall in your own esteem, that is the mind at play. The next trick that the mind is going to do is going to make you do some wrong action. Something that you will completely be, you will feel, how could I do this action? That is the mind at play. So this mind that is constantly telling you things, and I'll stop with that. Swami says, this mind, this is directly from the Gita Vahini. It's not my doing. Don't think that Ravi always tries to take us to this mind, but I did enjoy reading this. Swami says, the faculty of the mind, these are Swami's own words, brothers and sisters. This mind that condemns you and says, oh, you are not believing in Swami or doubting him. Swami himself doesn't condemn us. He just jokes and says, oh, you are doubting Thomases. He puts it in a casual way. And you ask him for his grace, he will remove your doubt. Swami says the faculty of the mind is like a strong current of electricity. It has to be watched from a distance. What a lot of other gurus and others call witnessing, Swami is making it so easy. And then he says, desires are objective. They belong to the category of the seen. Everything that is outside of you, separate from you, and you are attracted to, that is objective. It's very easy. The moment your mind, as I showed you in that picture, is driven towards the senses and to going outward, remember this teaching of Swami. Oh, these are objective. And what is the opposite of objective? Subjective. What is this subjective? That is yourself. If you turn your mind towards your Atma, inwards, and that is where you need not to doubt, that Sanshaya Atma Vinashyati. Many people think, oh, why is Ravi talking about all this? Why is he constantly telling us to believe? That is, so the teaching is easy. The faith is difficult. That is what Swami says here. This, out of the people, why is it difficult to follow? People who have faith and people who have knowledge, this mix of faith and knowledge is very important. The lowest people are those who have knowledge but no faith. The middle people are those who have faith but no knowledge. And most of us are in that category. We have developed faith in Swami. We don't see our own spiritual progress, but hold on. The faith is the most important thing. The rest anyway has to be done by the guru. This alchemy of turning a base metal into gold is going to be done by the guru. And this, when you tie it back to the teaching about not taking ownership, not being bound. NATO, don't be bound. Don't think of your own actions. Be free. Be sthita prajna. Have that sharanagati. Swami, I did this as your instrument. I take that action, I offer it to your feet. As you do that more and more, that faith which allows you to believe that desires are objective and are external, slowly and slowly you will go beyond the clutches of this mind. This mind which is giving this electric current. Swami says, be watchful. Whatever the mind is telling you, everything, anything that your mind tells you, take it with a pinch of salt. And be assured that you are the seer, not the seen. And Swami says over here, if you touch the current, you are reduced to ashes. So too, contact and attachment give the mind the chance to ruin you. The farther you are from it, the better. By skillful methods, you have to make best use of it for your welfare. How do you use the mind? Oh, I have to book this ticket to Puttaparthi. Oh, I have to get to the size center now. That is what the mind is to be used for. Don't use the mind for beyond those things. Have that faith and don't. So everything is going to come very, very easily to us. You and I are already the chosen ones of Swami. And don't minimize what that means. Stay inspired. That inspiration that I got when I read how Swami took T.G. Krishnamurti and went and cured that Parvatama and said to T.G. Krishnamurti very casually in the car, she has a lot of work to do. And you know what he told T.G. Krishnamurti? Dare you tell this to anybody? And you know what T.G. Krishnamurti did? In the afternoon when Swami retired to his room, he went to Parvatama and he asked her, what did Swami do? Did Swami really come here? And when he came back to Sundaram, Swami said, hey, Krishnamurti, you doubt me? I told you don't tell anybody about Parvatama and don't do anything about it, and you still went to see her? And he said, Swami, I didn't go there with doubt. I wanted to learn about this wonderful Leela of yours, Swami. So that Leela gave me back my Ananda, my inspiration. So what is most important is this mind is going to constantly take you down the path of the senses, either make us do wrong action or wrong thought, sometimes wrong words. And then what it's going to do after that, it's going to tell you, hey, anyway, you have fallen. Now you keep falling. You are not deserving. You are not remaining in that position that Swami wants you to do. So anyway, you come out of that. And then that is the point at which you have to say, hey, mind, so what? Even Vishwamitra fell. Even Vishwamitra tried to teach Ram and Krishna, Ram and Lakshmana. And Swami himself lovingly calls us doubting Thomas. Don't worry, I will rise above this, and rise. And find these miracles, these instances, the story of the hospital, to stay inspired. What is most important is to stay inspired. When we stay inspired, the mind pulling us down will be less likely. And then you can bring this teaching to your mind, NATO, not attached to outcomes. And then the other teaching you can bring and say, okay, I did well in this. Swami, here is my action. I offer it at your feet. Or when you fail badly, everybody in your office is screaming at you. Say, oh Swami, I was your instrument. I genuinely thought of this presentation, this research, this whatever I built for my company. I took it as your action, but I failed, Swami. Apparently, I take it and I offer it at your feet. And let's try to practice this. As we try to practice this sincerely, again, the Gita is not to learn the tricks of the verses and to go and give somebody a lecture. These verses, these words will not come to your rescue. What will come to your rescue is the love of the master, the inspiration, because the Gita is a call to action. I know I've gone a little bit beyond. I'll stop and see if there are any one or two questions I can take, brothers and sisters. Thank you for your participation. Any one or two questions we can quickly take up.
Sairam Ravi, this is Archana. So recently I was listening to conversation in Radio Sai about the Karma Siddhanta. So there they say that your good actions will have the consequences, if not in this birth, in later births. So, and in this chapter, Swami says, like, do not get attached to the outcome of your actions. And let's say if we do bad actions, and if we don't think of the outcomes of it, how can we have fear of sin? And we have to face consequences of any action anyways, right?
Perfect. Very good question. Thank you for bringing it up. And I'll give you quick inputs, what I know. So, nobody is saying that the results of action are not going to happen. But what we call causality is the way our mind perceives it. So, I started by giving that example. Your daughter is a great vocalist today. For 10 years, you drove her to the vocal class. She did very well and she had a great teacher. But there are so many students who went for the same vocal class and they dropped out. They didn't become great vocalists. They didn't even become vocalists at all. And maybe your daughter became even a greater vocalist than her teacher. Now, who can we ascribe causality to? And it is further muddled up by the fact of what you said, that maybe she had done something great in her previous lives. So, how do we ascribe causality? What led to your daughter becoming a great and renowned vocalist? As an example. So, what Bhagwan is telling at one level is that causality, as you and I know it, is very difficult to ascribe. And that should be the reason why you and I don't take credit for anything. Number one. Number two, yes, the intention behind the action is going to rebound on us. If I take a stone and throw it at another child, it is very highly likely that somebody is going to throw a stone at you or at your child. We don't know how karmic events unfold. But this karma, it's the results and it's binding. What the Gita is trying to tell us, sister, over here is, while action and reaction are going to constantly happen, there is some kind of dynamism there. There is some kind of linkage there, but we should not call it causality. There is a linkage. There are so many events in the universe, and something is leading to something else. That what that should do is make you wait, make you pause, make you hold off from taking credit or blame. And second thing that should happen is uh, you should learn to offer those actions to God or to your guru mentally. Why? Because while this action and reaction are going to keep having that equilibrium in some shape or form, which you and I cannot discover, but yes, there is some karmic law. If you want to get out of it, so the whole Gita is not trying to teach us how to do good action and to have good result. Good action will probably have good result, but that is not the purpose of the Gita. The purpose of the Gita is, how do I escape of the bondage? So Swami used to lovely way teach us, is to say that sattva, rajas and tamas, all three are chains. Tamas is a iron chain. Rajoguna is a silver chain. And sattva is a golden chain. But remember, all three are creating bondage. All three are chains and they will bind you. So irrespective of whether you do good karma and have good result or do bad karma and have bad result, the point that the Gita, the point that Swami is trying to make here is, hey, I'm showing you how to come out of this perpetual cycle. We are trapped as human beings. We are trapped in a perpetual cycle. And the Gita is not trying to tell you do good karma, then you'll become a rishi, then you'll have more disciples, then you'll go to heaven. The Gita is saying, Sri Krishna is saying, if you do good karma, you will propitiate the middle level gods, that is Indra and the celestial beings. But if you do yagna of your karma, that is, you do action, but you do it with vairagya. You do it not attached to the action. I don't work in this company thinking that I am going to become a vice president here. I don't do seva in the Sai organization with an eye at becoming a regional officer. I don't pick up trash in the park thinking that the camera is looking, who is this guy coming every day to the park to pick up trash so that they'll give me some points as volunteer points. I do action as an instrument of Sai. I do as action as an instrument of God. I have an inner conviction. And then that is where, sister, Swami said to us many times, this anugraha that you are seeking from me will release you from the binding of the Navagraha. So what does it mean? This Navagraha is the 9 planets which in Indian astrology say, oh Shani, oh this, oh Rahu, Ketu. These are binding our lives, these are guiding our lives, these are creating problems, health, job, all that. Swami said, if you can offer everything to me, have that Sharanagati to me, then I will give you Anugraha. That's what we ended last class where we saw that Swami putting the hand on that gentleman's head. So, sister, the point here is it's not about good action and good result, bad action and bad result. Even if we have done some bad action, but today you sit back and think, oh, Swami, you know, one of the first things I did when I joined Swami's college, I saw the other boys were so pure. You know, when the first thing I did was I took 2-3 inland letters and I confessed all my bad actions to Swami. I wrote it in detail to Swami. And some of my classmates were saying, Ravi, what are you writing? So I was crying and writing. So I'm confessing all my faults to Swami. So that is also the very beautiful meaning of the Christian confession, where you go. So sister, and all of us, irrespective of whether you have done good or bad action, it is binding with a iron chain or a gold chain. And that is going to bring you back to earth. That is going to bring you back to human life. Whether it makes you reborn as an animal or as a sage, doesn't matter. But you'll still have the pitfalls of life. So what Krishna is teaching us is the method of release. And that is where it is very difficult to grasp that. That samshaya atma vinashyate is what will happen. We are going to be bound, but that, hey, why is Swami talking about release when I am so stuck up with the idea of good karma? So here is an opportunity. Yes, good karma, purity at one level, but higher than that is the possibilities, the potential of merging in Swami and getting self-realized by letting go and offering every action physically, doing that manasik puja and taking every action. Swami, I did so many bad things 10 years back, 12 years back, 15 years back. Swami, I offer even the bad things I did in my previous births. I don't even know what it is. And that is also the meaning of that verse which we chant every night. Vihitam avihitam va sarvametat shamasva. Oh Lord, I can't see you. I don't know where you are. Swami, today, even Samadhi in Puttaparthi, I cannot visit. Swami, I have done so many bad actions. And even if the good action, Swami, I give you both at your lotus feet. You are my savior. And why am I offering even good actions to you? I don't want even to go to heaven. Swami, I want to be at your lotus feet. I don't want to propitiate Indra. I want to propitiate you, O Shri Krishna, you, O Satya Sai. So I'm sorry I went over, but I will stop here before Shubha starts getting very concerned.
Oh, no, Ravi. this, this is good. I mean, a lot to think about, right? And I guess Swami's life itself is like, message of Gita. And again, some of the incidents you told were so beautiful and something to think about. And again, I know, Ravi, I mean, I had to ask one question. In this, especially in the corporate world, right? It's exactly the opposite. The way they, unless you tell or you take credit, nobody's going to recognize you. How do you balance that? Because it's like inner conflict, right? You come with the message that, okay, I'll just keep doing my work, but that's not the way it works there. So
yes,
that's an inner conflict. How do you work around that?
Yes. So I'll tell you a very beautiful story. In just 1 minute, I won't elaborate on it. And it's also not proper to elaborate on it, but you can all go and read about it. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa had many disciples, many disciples. There was one particular disciple who came to Sri Ramakrishna, and he would have a big problem with everything that he said. So one day Sri Ramakrishna very lovingly asked him, "What is it that is troubling you?" And he said, "Master, day and night I'm doing wrong. Day and night. I do a lot of wrong actions. I do a lot of wrong actions. None of those actions you would approve." And that is the beauty of the masters. All the masters alike, they are very powerful, but more greater than their power is their compassion. And we had that first-hand opportunity to see that Christ had so much power and so much compassion. Swami had immense power, but more important was his compassion. What does Sri Ramakrishna tell him? In that compassion, he tells him, "Don't worry. I know everything about all the bad actions that you do." See, that would be so unsettling to somebody, right? That here is it, I'm telling my bad actions, and he's saying, "I know everything about it. My God, this is dangerous." And then he tells him, "Okay, you just do one thing for me. Every time you perform the bad action, go ahead. Just offer it to me. Just offer it to me." And long story short, over months, he performs that action and offers it. And then slowly he's unable to perform that action and he comes out of it. I can share more details with you. Now, we're coming to your question about the corporate world. We are not performing bad actions there, clearly. But we are performing actions and we are positioning ourselves. We are putting ourselves in the limelight. We are taking credit for it and telling people, "I did this." Why? So that we want the next project, all that. Now, there are two responses I have to that. One is, if we have the guts, if we have the trust, if we have the courage. See, spirituality requires a lot of courage. Then we will not just do what others are doing. Right? That is the third level that Sri Krishna talked about: spiritual knowledge and faith. Both of these, if they are in plenty, then we will say, "No, I'm not going to go down this route." And Sister Shubha, there are many people who have had great success even in worldly life, who are even college dropouts, work dropouts. So I'm not saying that will happen to us if we do that, but it might. But if we open ourselves to the universe, if we have courage and we walk down a particular path, let us see what happens. That is one path where we are tremendously courageous. We say, "I believe in Swami." This is what Phyllis Crystal did. Swami hadn't told her in the interview room previous day that you're going to be in that plane and you're going to face people with detonative devices around you. Why did Swami not tell her that? So many things Swami predicts and prepares us. And in the plane, her husband is telling her, "Shut up. If you talk, these people will explode the device." It's that courage. So if we have the courage, we can manifest those qualities. That is the highest level. If we don't have that courage, we can take this other path. Okay, I have to position myself. I have to take credit for what I do. This is the way of my company. This is the way of my peer. Then what I do is I do it. I do it. And like Sri Ramakrishna taught that disciple, say, "Okay, Swami, this I'm lost. I'm swimming with the stream. I don't have the courage to stand out and follow this high command. So I did it, Swami. I did what others are doing. And it's nothing wrong, but I think it's subtly I could have stayed away from doing that and touting my own achievements and all that. But Swami, I take that and I offer it at your feet." So we have these two options, and it's not like I have found the answer. I have, in my work life, when I came back into a different role, I said, "I'm going to be an enabler. Let people do whatever they like." And I found people have moved ahead of me and I'm working with them. But one thing they are all able to see very clearly is that this guy is trying to act as an enabler. He's not withholding information as all of us are doing. We can go to him. And in another way, I have become successful. So I think, and if you believe even in this law of karma, that you are building up some good karma. It will hold you in good stead later. But I personally feel, if you have the courage, let us now, after so many years of being Swami's devotees, have the courage. Say, I will be different. Yeah, these people are doing this. And see, there have been so many people who have been different even in the worldly way. Take Steve Jobs. He got thrown out from his own company. He built another company. He said, okay, these guys. So you, by being different, by being, by having the conviction of what we have learned, by taking that, by doing the nididhyasana and trying to internalize those teachings, it will itself give us courage to act. And you don't have to worry, why am I not able to act? It will come. It will come. Right now, you act to the extent that you can act. Later on, you will act like a Vivekanand, or you will act like a great person did. It'll all come in good time. But right now, I think the best way for us is, yes, Swami, I did what all these people are doing, and I offer it at your lotus feet. You save me from the consequences, because I have known you. I worship you. And I know that just by the fact that you brought me to your feet, I am saved. Say that to yourself. Feel inspired. And that itself, that will become a yajna.
Thank you so much, Ravi. I think if you have time, we have one more question from Radhu uncle. Radhu uncle, go ahead.
The Ravi, I was trying to link up the point that you were making when Sri Krishna is categorizing the various occupation groups, and I had a two-part question to it. The first part is the occupational groupings that were set up became into caste and to has a negative impact to the Hindu society, if you want to call it that. And the second part question is the causality of how Swami or Sri Krishna was deciding that a person, an individual soul, should be categorized into any one of those four occupational groups, in the sense that somewhere he decided that soul A should become a Brahmin and soul B should become a Shudra. How is that addressed in the Gita? Can you talk about that?
That I think will require a little bit more time, Uncle, but I think very valuable question. And I'll just try to address it briefly here, but we can also sync up. And I'll also share with the whole group that particular page, excuse me, where Swami has in great detail spoken about what is this dharma, and excuse me, what is the meaning of these four groups and how they have been misused and abused. So, uh, is it by birth, or is it by, are we in the one of these four groups by birth simply, or is it by vocation? That is the big question that is being asked. And Swami has answered it in the Gita Vahini by saying that it is by vocation. It is not what you're born into. Now, we don't know at what point in humanity's journey these things got changed, they got colored, they got, misinterpreted. But for me, the takeaway from this is not, where do I belong today? Where do you belong today? Are you Shudra? Are you Vaishya? No, that is not what I really took away. And I want to share that in the spirit of sharing, right? What I learned from this verse is that I created abilities. After I created the world, I created abilities in human beings. And why did I create these abilities? So that there is a coexistence between society, and the abilities of one are valued by another, and uh, and that valuable work, that valuable uh, effort that one makes in society creates this mix of what we call society. And Swami has actually done that in the Gita, in the Gita Vahini. He says these are the characteristics of society and the abilities that I have embedded in different people. And this together forms the unit which then can work on its own. And another point from that is, I don't think it was ever intended to say, to condemn the person who does the work of, say, lifting garbage and say that you cannot become a scholar. Again, that's my personal belief. I don't think that was the intention. The intention was, whether you like it or not, there has to be a scholar, right? Who are the scholars in today's society? In India, we think that they are the priests, but in other places and even in India, you think that they are the knowledgeable people. They are the scholars. They are the people who are doing their PhD. They are people who are pursuing knowledge. So the pursuit of knowledge puts you in that category, what we call Brahmana. You don't have to be putting the namam here, cutting your hair in that way, wearing a silk dhoti, and then be called a Brahman. Same way, if you are interested in buying and selling, if you are interested in helping demand be fulfilled by supply, it's as simple as that. That is what a Vaishya does. But by saying that you are a person who does, you are a merchant, you are a shopkeeper, that is reducing. So this is the challenge that we face in today's society. If we keep it at the level of demand and supply, I am a person who helps demand be fulfilled by supply. I am a person who is scholarly, I'm academic. I seek knowledge. I seek the truth about what makes the atom, what are gravitational waves. I'm in that group. If I do not want to invest in all of these things, what else can I do? I can be a soldier. I can protect my nation. I can add to the security of society. Securing society is called Kshatriya, not necessarily one who wields the machine gun. So you say, oh, if I'm not able to wield the bow and arrow or the machine gun, then I'm not. No, I help improve society's security. So, uncle, whether we like it or not, these four, these are four pillars of our society. And I have heard Swami describe this so many times so beautifully, and that is why. So you may wonder, hey, this Ravi is always going to give us such platonic, altruistic explanations of everything. But this is how Swami taught us. And I always believe that, in the true spirit, after having met this great master, and I'll tell you myself, I was too intellectual, I was too academic, and I got saved from that intellectualism and academic nature by meeting Swami. Then I became silent. I said, not me but you, not me but you. And that helped me empty out a little bit. And I tried to understand in the true spirit of what Sri Krishna is saying, that before you question, listen and understand. And when I listened and I understood that these four pillars are what upholds society, don't reduce it to the level of saying that, hey, so you are a Shudra, you have to do cleaning work your whole life, you're doomed. That is not what was the idea of creation of a society with an interdependence and an interlocking of the value that different roles provide to society. Teachers do their work with tremendous joy. But when we say, oh, teachers are underpaid, teachers are, no use in society, we undercut the role of the teacher. The teacher who invested in knowledge became the teacher because of the passion of teaching. So when you look at it in that light and you open, but the first thing you have to understand is that Sri Krishna says, when I created the world, I created these varnas. So if you stop at that 5,000 years before statement, and don't look at the intervening period and how the varnas have been misinterpreted, abused. I think that's where we will get the opportunity, one, to understand the teaching in the right light, and secondly, most important, is to appreciate and live that teaching and not condemn people, right? And that is the beauty. For instance, in this country, people do not condemn the janitor. They do not condemn the people who are doing blue collar jobs. And there is a role for all types of roles in society. So I'll stop with that, but we can also take this up in greater detail. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that, we have only one more session. But if it is not becoming too boring for you, then we can request Shubha and see if we can extend. But
Oh,
I think,
definitely, Ravi. I mean, I think I'm seeing all the comments here. These are extremely, useful sessions that we can learn from. So, I mean, we can definitely extend it. I know the topic is so vast. Putting it in only 4 sessions does not seem to make it justice. So, we can definitely extend that. Yes.
and I think, Shubha, we also need to do some amount of swadhyay.
Yes.
Swadhyay meaning self-study. I don't
Correct.
mean to put you all on the spot. Just that I'll tell you very honestly, this is something we have to recognize in ourselves. Again, this morning when I was reading the Gita Vahini, I opened like a workbench, 4-5 different things. Swami's Gita Vahini, the verses, other things. I could see the welling up of inner joy in myself. And I tell you, this is not about concepts. This is about with faith. When you do that, right? When you seek the teaching with faith, it will automatically give that actionability and inner joy. So I'm inviting all of you to start using these resources and test it. Go and ask Swami. Swami, this Ravi guy, he keeps on saying that he's feeling this inner joy on the morning before his talk. Can I get that inner joy when I read your Gita Vahini? Throw that challenge to him. He's waiting there for you and saying, why aren't you asking me for that inner joy, which I'm giving Ravi unasked? Ask me, I'll give it to you. Stop with that, and hope all of you enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll meet each other next week again.
Yes.
Sai Ram.
Hi, Ram. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Ravi.
Jai Sai Ram.
Hi, Ram.